In 1968, a young woman named Iris and her fiancé, Paul, attended the grand opening of the Skyview restaurant. Amid the glittering lights and elegant music, Paul proposed, slipping a sparkling engagement ring onto her finger. But just as applause filled the room, Iris noticed something unsettling. Above them, a young boy flipped a coin over the railing. It fell silently, as if death itself had guided it, landing perfectly in a ventilation shaft. The coin jammed a spinning fan, stopping it instantly. Inside the tower, guests danced, unaware that the glass floor beneath them had begun to crack. Tiny fractures spread like spiderwebs, and the metal supports below strained to their limits. Bolts popped loose, one after another. Then, the stuck coin shattered a fan blade, which flew across the vent and pierced a nearby gas pipe. Gas hissed into the air, invisible and deadly. Iris's heart raced. Something was terribly wrong. Without warning, Paul's foot broke through the weakening glass, and he plunged downward. Screams filled the hall as people began to fall, clawing desperately at the metal beams to save themselves. Down below, staff looked up in horror. Paul managed to grab a section of reinforced glass, hanging on for dear life. Iris cried out, but no one could help. She reached toward him, but he slipped into the smoke and fire below. Panic consumed the building. A woman, her dress ablaze, ran into the leaking gas, and in an instant, a massive explosion tore through the tower. Flames engulfed everything. Those who couldn't escape were consumed. Iris barely made it out alive. Staff screamed for everyone to evacuate. But death had planned ahead. The remaining survivors rushed to the elevator. An elderly man shoved Iris aside, trying to squeeze in, but got trapped between the doors. The overloaded elevator jolted violently, crushing him instantly. Panting, Iris searched for another exit, but exhaustion and panic hit her hard. She was pregnant. Objects slid as the tilted building groaned, cracks snaking across the ceiling. Realizing the danger, she scrambled upward as fast as she could. Others weren't so lucky. The floor split apart, tilting sharply. People slid helplessly, crashing through shattered glass. One woman landed on a reinforced panel and thought she was safe, until a piano above swayed dangerously. Death struck again. A single coin dropped, hitting the piano. It plummeted, crushing the woman instantly. One by one, everyone around fell. The young boy who had escaped earlier smirked, until the same piano crashed down on him. Iris was left alone, mourning Paul through smoke and flames. She spotted another boy trapped nearby and ran to save him, risking everything. At that moment, the upper floors gave way, and the tower began to collapse. In a desperate leap, Iris grabbed a twisted piece of metal. But it wasn't her grip that saved her, it was Paul's engagement ring, caught on a steel rod, holding her just a moment longer. The fragile hold snapped, and Iris fell into the inferno below. But this wasn't just any nightmare. It was the same one she'd been having every night for 2 months. Finally, Stephanie told her roommate about it. In the dream, there was always a woman named Iris, her grandmother's name. The strange thing was, Stephanie had never met Iris and didn't even know if she was still alive. Her roommate suggested she visit home to learn more about her grandmother. Perhaps then the nightmares would stop. So Stephanie went home and asked her father, Marty, about Iris. He hesitated, forced a smile, but something in his expression told Stephanie he was hiding the truth. At that moment, her younger brother Charlie said he was going to visit their cousins. Stephanie decided to go with him. Before leaving, Marty warned them sternly not to mention Iris during the visit. The warning only made Stephanie more suspicious. What had really happened to Iris? And if the woman in her dreams was Iris, and something terrible had happened, how did her mother, Darlene, fit into all this? At their cousin's home, Stephanie went straight to her Uncle Howard, demanding answers about her mother. Howard froze, startled, and tried to change the subject. But when Stephanie mentioned the Skyview restaurant from her dreams, both Howard and his wife, Brenda, went pale. Stephanie pressed for the truth, and even her cousins gathered, curious. After tense silence, Howard revealed the shocking truth. Iris wasn't dead, but she wasn't fully alive either. She had suffered a severe mental breakdown years ago. Stephanie demanded more. Howard explained that after their father died, Iris lost control, becoming paranoid and overprotective. She feared her children would die and kept them locked inside, refusing to let them go to school or see anyone. Eventually, the police intervened, and Iris was institutionalized. But she never stopped obsessing over the family. Howard and Brenda said Iris tracked their progress through foster care. When they built their own families, with kids named Eric, Julia, and Bobby, Iris began sending disturbing letters filled with gruesome photographs of dead bodies and terrifying warnings. Out of fear, they cut all contact and moved away. Stephanie begged to see the letters, but Howard and Brenda refused. After pleading, Brenda quietly revealed their hidden location. That night, Stephanie found them, and saw the woman in the faded photos looked exactly like the one in her nightmares. The dreams weren't just dreams, they were real. Determined, Stephanie drove alone to the address on one envelope. It led her deep into the mountains, to a secluded, weathered cabin. She pressed the intercom. A shaky, older voice answered, "Iris." Iris immediately told her to leave. When Stephanie revealed she was her granddaughter, Iris hesitated, then ordered her to empty her pockets before entering. Moments later, the heavy steel door creaked open. Stephanie stepped inside cautiously. The interior was cluttered with strange contraptions, and sharp metal spikes lined the ceiling. Iris explained nervously that everything was meant to protect her from unseen threats. As Stephanie moved forward, Iris's voice trembled. "Close the door. Quickly." Iris warned her not to touch anything. Every object could be a deadly trap. Finally, seeing her granddaughter, Iris smiled warmly and asked about Stephanie's mother, Darlene. Stephanie explained she had been separated from her mother since age 10 and didn't know how she was doing. Then Stephanie asked about her nightmare. Iris revealed it wasn't just a dream, it was a vision. She had once seen the future and foresaw a terrible disaster. Years ago, Iris stood on the highest rooftop with Paul. A woman's hat flew off in the wind, and a young boy tried to toss a coin over the edge, but a guard stopped him. Still, the boy insisted. Paul was about to propose when Iris suddenly screamed, the building was going to collapse and everyone would die. Paul looked bewildered. Iris sprinted toward the boy and snatched the coin from his hand, the key object that would set off the butterfly effect. She raced downstairs, saw smoke rising from a pot in the kitchen, and noticed people dancing inside the restaurant. She rushed to the stage, grabbed the microphone, and shouted for everyone to watch the floor. Some tried to stop her, but others saw the cracks spreading beneath their feet. That night, she saved countless lives. The building didn't collapse, but the restaurant eventually shut down. Iris had altered fate, and death wasn't pleased. Years later, death returned, claiming the lives of everyone who had survived that night, including her husband, Paul. It was then that Iris discovered she could sense death's approach. She spent years preventing disasters, but now, death had finally caught up. She was dying of cancer. While talking to Stephanie, Iris let her guard down. Death moved silently. Sunlight hit a magnifying glass, bounced off a metal tray, and focused on a rope until it started to smoke. Iris believed Stephanie's recurring dreams were a sign. Perhaps she had inherited the same gift. Suddenly, Iris sensed danger. She turned, spotted the reflection, and knocked the magnifying glass away just in time. Death had counted on her being distracted by her granddaughter's visit. But Iris stayed alert. She told Stephanie to stay put and learn the basics. It was far too dangerous outside. Iris herself hadn't left the house in 20 years. Stephanie refused. She had to return to school. Iris warned her, death was coming for their family. But Stephanie dismissed it, thinking it was just a dream. She didn't believe a word and walked toward the door. Before leaving, Iris begged her to take a book, an old family journal. As Stephanie reached for the door, Iris froze. She had another vision, the wind, the compass, the trigger objects. She knew if Stephanie stepped outside, she would die. Still, for her granddaughter's sake, she took the risk. Iris stepped out, tossed the book into Stephanie's arms, and said it could protect the family. Stephanie still didn't believe her. So Iris told her to step back. She would prove everything was real. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in, knocking over the compass. It struck a fire extinguisher, sending it flying, and it stabbed Iris through the mouth. Stephanie finally realized her grandmother was gone. Her relatives attended the funeral. Stephanie warned her father and uncle that Iris had said death was coming, but they ignored her. Just then her mother, Darlene, peered, still angry at her own mother. Stephanie walked away silently. Back home, Stephanie began reading the book Iris had given her. Meanwhile, the rest of the family was at Howard's house, enjoying a barbecue, laughing and eating, completely unaware of the looming danger. Death had arrived. Bobby accidentally broke a glass, not noticing that shards had mixed with the ice cubes. Eric placed his drink near a gas tank. Unknowingly, they were setting themselves up as Death's next instruments. When everyone gathered to eat and drink, they used the ice with the hidden glass shards. Howard raised a toast, reminding everyone that Iris's death was a reason to live in the moment. Glasses clinked, sips were taken, and suddenly, Julia started choking. Something was stuck in her throat, and she gasped for air. Panic ensued, but she had simply swallowed wrong. She was fine. Inside, Stephanie read Iris's book and came across a chapter detailing the coin incident and a barbecue grill. Outside, Eric was lighting the grill. Bobby called Charlie over to jump on the trampoline, unaware of a sharp rake hidden beneath it. The book slipped from Stephanie's hands. She felt a sudden, terrible sense of danger. As the grill lit, a photo frame fell and shattered. A glass shard bounced across the floor, landing in someone's drink. Howard sipped, but nothing happened. The camera focused on Darlene's glass. Was it hers? Stephanie sensed something was wrong. She headed toward Howard's house, calling Charlie, but he didn't pick up. The trampoline's stitching was loose, ready to give way. On her way, she saw a warning sign, "Danger ahead," as if death itself were trying to stop her. The glass shard ended up in her father Marty's drink, but he only took a small sip and put it down. Howard went to jump on the trampoline, which could collapse any second. Luckily, Darlene spotted the hidden rake, shouted, and removed it, returning it to the shed. But then Brenda accidentally knocked over a bottle, hitting a switch on a nearby machine. Pipes below began to twist and shake, and the same rake started sliding again. When Stephanie arrived, death was ready. Howard walked over to greet her. Suddenly, Bobby's leg got caught in the trampoline. Julia turned, and a shard of glass fell from her cup. Howard stepped on it, wincing in pain. At that moment, the rake fell onto a lawn mower. Howard lost his balance, and the mower charged straight at him, ending his life. The relatives attended another funeral. Stephanie rushed home to study the books again. She found a note. JB found someone who survived. She began analyzing who might be next. Iris and Paul's children were Howard and Darlene. Howard's children were Eric, Julia, and Bobby. Darlene's children were Stephanie and Charlie. All were connected by blood. None could escape death. Stephanie explained the pattern to the others. They listened quietly. It all traced back to the restaurant's original death list. The order of deaths matched what Iris had seen. Hundreds should have died, but Iris had saved them, and now death was returning, claiming them one by one. Death followed a strict order, starting with Howard's family, then moving on to Stephanie's. Marty and Brenda weren't blood-related, so they were likely safe. That meant the most immediate danger was Howard's eldest son, Eric. But no one believed Stephanie. They thought she was obsessed or cursed, and one by one, they walked away. Eric arrived at work. A spinning fan brushed against a hanging chain, which hooked perfectly onto Eric's nose ring. Nearby, disinfectant spilled onto the floor. The fan kept turning, slowly tightening the chain. Eric couldn't remove the ring. He had to balance on his tiptoes, rising higher and higher, accidentally bumping a lamp. The lamp fell, instantly igniting the flammable disinfectant. Chaos erupted. Glass shattered across the table. Eric panicked, trapped and in excruciating pain, struggling desperately to free himself. At the last second, Eric yanked the chain off, but in falling, he knocked over more disinfectant. Moments later, the shop exploded. Meanwhile, Stephanie was frantic. Eric hadn't answered her calls all night. She grabbed Charlie and rushed out to find him. On the way, they nearly got into an accident. Luckily, Eric survived, tearing off his burning leather clothes. But what came next made Stephanie even more certain that death was hunting them. Eric, however, still refused to believe. So Stephanie decided to stay by his side, following Iris's notes to prevent potential chain reactions. For instance, a tree trimmer suddenly fell from a branch, almost hitting a boy's soccer ball, which could have struck Eric. Just then they ran into Julia jogging. A garbage truck rolled by. Stephanie warned Eric to stay back, but he goofed around near the truck. Julia ignored them, put on her headphones and kept running. No one expected what happened next. Julia was accidentally thrown into the garbage truck. Stephanie leapt after her, grabbed her hand, but it was too late. Julia was crushed by the compactor. That was the moment the rest of the family finally understood. Death was real, and it was coming for them. Then Brenda revealed a shocking truth. Eric wasn't Howard's biological son. He was the result of her affair. That might explain why Eric survived, which meant the next in danger was Howard's younger son, Bobby. Stephanie remembered a name from Iris's notes, William, someone both she and Darlene knew. They rushed to the hospital to find him. William turned out to be the same boy Iris had saved years ago. He explained that there were only two ways to cheat death, either kill someone to take their place or die and come back. He warned that he, too, was now sick like Iris and his time was almost up. All of them would eventually die in the exact order Iris had foreseen. The truth was terrifying. He cautioned, do not interfere too much with death's design. If you fail, things could become even worse. Then he walked away, leaving them to cherish the time they had left. Eric thought the simplest way to save Bobby might be to die and come back. He suggested Bobby eat peanuts, hoping a severe allergic reaction would force doctors to save him. They bought a bag from a vending machine, but it got stuck. Frustrated, Eric smashed the glass, and together they even lifted the machine to get the peanuts. Finally, they succeeded and stepped into the next room, but accidentally activated the MRI scanner. The machine's magnetic force pulled in all metal. Eric's piercings were ripped toward the scanner, and even a wheelchair behind him flew forward. He was crushed against the MRI machine. Bobby, who had just eaten the peanuts, tried to help, reaching for the EpiPen in Eric's hand. At that moment, a doctor opened the door, and a loose spring from the vending machine flew across the room, stabbing straight through Bobby's head. Stephanie, Darlene, and Charlie held each other tightly. They realized they could no longer fight death directly, so they followed Iris's path and risked everything, driving deep into the mountains to her old cabin. Unnoticed, a coin slipped from the notebook. An old woman picked it up from the ground. The cabin felt eerie, as if death was already waiting. As long as she reached the cabin safely, everyone else might have been safe, but no one noticed the sparks flickering from a short-circuited wire on the roof. Just as Darlene reached the cabin door, a massive explosion ripped through the car. Stephanie was thrown into a pond, while Charlie was pinned under wooden boards. Injured, Darlene crawled over and freed Charlie, telling him to save Stephanie quickly. Before he could react, a light pole toppled from above, striking Darlene and killing her instantly. Charlie rushed to pull Stephanie from the water. She was unconscious, but he revived her just in time. The two clung to each other, laughing in relief. This had to be what William meant by die and come back. Yet when Stephanie realized Darlene was dead, her relief vanished. Tears streamed down her face. Only she and Charlie remained from Iris's bloodline. A week later, Charlie and Stephanie visited his girlfriend's house. While fixing Charlie's clothes, Stephanie pricked her finger on a rose thorn, and the nightmare came rushing back. In that dream, Iris had pricked her finger too. An old woman dropped a coin, which rolled down steps and got stuck between train tracks, with a speeding train barreling toward it. Charlie's girlfriend's father, a doctor, explained, "You weren't technically dead. If someone revives your breathing while your heart never stops, you weren't really dead." But to Stephanie and Charlie, that sounded far from reassuring. Stephanie noticed a red car, just like in her dream. Charlie's girlfriend was even dressed like Iris had been. A sense of dread gripped her. Suddenly, the train derailed, charging straight toward them. Stephanie tripped, but Charlie grabbed her and pulled her to safety. For a moment, it seemed they had escaped, But the danger was far from over.